Well, I would describe it as an embodiment. It's, you have certain key Daoist values that connect to the function of qi, vital energy. And vital energy flows in movements up and down, the yin and yang movement. And of course, you know that the Tai Chi symbol symbolizes the yin and the yang. And so Tai Chi is an embodied feeling, it's an activation. And you do it in your breathing. You're breathing in and you're breathing out. It's a yin-yang movement. You're raising and lowering your arms. It's a yin-yang movement. And a lot of it is with this, what we call the Tai Chi ball, where you're moving, you know, and you're actually thinking of the Tai Chi going one way and yin and yang going the other way, and then you're stepping, you're sinking down, and you're lifting up. So it's an embodiment of the whole flow of yin and yang. And then that connects to the whole idea of heaven and earth, because, you know, you're connecting to heaven as you're lifting your hands, connecting to earth as you're sinking down, as your feet are in the earth, you're energetically connected, and there's the centrality and the idea of flowing up and down through heaven and earth, and it connects to nature. A lot of Tai Chi is practiced outside, and usually at the time in the morning when the yang energy, the sun is rising, yang energy comes up, and so you're connecting to the flow of nature through the trees and the grass under your feet and the clouds above and the sky. So you have those very basic things that sort of make up the core of the Daoist universe that you're now feeling, and not just feeling but also expressing in your very own body. It doesn't really adopt them, it's an expression of them. So Tai Chi historically developed as a martial art in the 17th century, at the time when the Manchus were conquering China. And one of the armies, a Ming soldier of the Ming army, as they were being defeated by the Manchus, he came home. And the Manchus had created the rule that nobody except the Manchu army were allowed to have weapons. And so this soldier came home to his village, Mr. Chen, into Chen village, and he found that his village was very vulnerable to various brigands and, you know, robbers and soldiers. And so he started to teach them these arts, and the arts of moving, of unarmed combat, essentially. And he used military practices for that. But the military practices that he was using were informed by Daoist principles, because it's like yin and yang and heaven and earth and nature and flowing is very much the core of Chinese worldview in general. But also the person who's the Ming general whose teaching Mr. Chen was working with was actually had studied, was a Daoist. And so we do have a connection there. And so the principles were already in the culture and already in the system, and then they were enforced by this particular combination of circumstances. The Tai Chi does not work in the same level as internal alchemy. And the thing is that, as I outlined before, the purpose of Tai Chi is to flow with yin and yang and to connect to nature and to enhance the energy flow within yourself and to be at one with nature. Internal alchemy goes much beyond that. It's a different dimension. Internal alchemy is the refinement of the energies to a much subtler level, and it's really aiming at something we call transcendence or immortality, where you're creating what they call the immortal embryo. It's a whole different level of energetic identity within yourself, and then that immortal embryo sort of rises through the body and then travels ecstatically into the stars. And Tai Chi does not do that. It's not meant for that. It's not for that purpose. On the other hand, what should be added is that Tai Chi very much is a good preparation for the practice of internal alchemy. And so we do have these energy practices, the harmony and the internal awareness of energy flow that you gain by the practice of Tai Chi is an important basis, an important foundation for the more advanced refinement that you then do in your seated meditations. The ultimate accomplishment for Taoists depends on where you're starting from and what your goals are. And so there are many different kinds of Taoists, such as there are many different kinds of Christians. So you have some Christians who just go to church once a year, you have some Christians who go every day, you have some Christians who live in a monastery. And they all have different levels of the level of Christianity that they would like to see in their lives. And so in a very comparative way, we have these different levels of Taoism. So some Taoists, when they practice Taoist techniques such as Tai Chi or other energy work or meditations or specific other practices, they just want to be very healthy because these practices are good for your health. And they're also stress releasing because every time you breathe deeply, your parasympathetic nervous system kicks in and you calm down and your heart rate calms down and your breathing is deeper and you get healthier. So people just do a lot of this to improve health. And then we have the level where people say, okay, I'm pretty healthy now and I really would like to feel very vigorous. And they want to attain that sense of harmony and an increased longevity. And they want to feel this flow we were talking about in their lives. And they want to really, like the coincidences that happen when you're like in line with Tao. You meet people in unexpected places. So you get to what Jung, the psychologist Carl Jung, what he called synchronicity. Those are signs that you're starting to be in line with Tao. So people want that level of really being, feeling guided and feeling supported and feeling in harmony with Tao. And then you have people who become very specialized, who become monastic practitioners, who go retreat from the world and who live in monasteries, and they become vegetarians and they don't eat any heavy spices and they practice, at all hours of the day, and they do very vigorous and intense meditation practices. And they also take herbal supplements and they do all kinds of chantings, and there's many different dimensions to the monastic life. And they really would like to become transcendents or immortals who would like to go beyond the world, who reach what we would call in the West like stages of mystical union. So to become completely one with Tao and to sort of go into what the Taoists call a state of oblivion, where it's like your identity falls away and you just join this mystery, you just dissolve into the greater. But you have to practice for that and you have to dedicate yourself full time for that. So we have all these different levels. The therapeutic applications of Daoism and Tai Chi have mostly to do with, in our modern world, with stress release. So people in the Western world, between technology and all the demands that their lives are making on them, they get very tense and very stressed. And so having some of these practices, whether it's a seated Taoist meditation where you're guiding your energy internally, or it's a movement practice such as Tai Chi, it allows you a buffer period. So you have your 20 minutes or your half hour every day where you just, for yourself, and you breathe deeply and you connect to heaven and earth and you're just releasing a lot of the tension. And studies have shown that doing that really lasts for 5-6 hours. And then all you have to do is breathe deeply again and just, bring this idea of that state back into yourself, and it lasts for another few hours. So your life becomes more peaceful. And that has distinct health effects. So people who have injuries or have ailments or have physical problems, they start these practices and they will find after a few weeks that things are starting to get better. And we do have many people who become quite serious Daoists who begin because they have some physical issues that regular medicine could not help them with, and then they start these practices and they get better. In addition, Tai Chi in particular, because it's a standing and a moving practice, and some of it is you're actually standing on, you're shifting your weight very carefully. Shift on one leg and then you step with the other foot, is unbelievably good for balance. And so older people, and there's many studies that have shown this, who have start issues with their inner ear and whose balance is not so good, they start the practice of, and to the point where they can't leave their house because they're afraid of falling, they start the practice of Tai Chi, and within like a month or two they're starting to move around and they get their lives back. So balance is a big issue in that, in addition to stress relief and other healing properties. So those are the therapeutic effects that you have, that you gain from these.